I am looking forward to this discussion, man, because like we've talked before this, and I think there's just so much to unpack today and get into, and I'm really been looking forward to it. I told April when we first floated the idea of starting a podcast, and then I got to have conversations with you at the gym. I was like, you know what? I think a conversation with Eason would be so much fun to do.
I really appreciate that. That's very flattering. And just thanks for having me, because I consider us colleagues and, pretty new relationship, but I look up to y'all's business being a family business. I look up to your values and you as a man, and I consider you a friend. And I think y'all are doing great things. And we talked a lot about like community lately, right? You don't
Right.
have those conversations with a lot of people that is meaningful, and some of that's really hit home and kind of given me the feels, about like being more involved in our respectful areas and our businesses, being involved in different chambers. And, you've talked about your involvement with your kids' schools and coaching kids. And I know we're not here to talk about that, but it kind of gives you a lot of good feels.
Well, that's high praise, man. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, you're Eason Maykus, president of Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods, and I think there's a legacy that a lot of people are going to recognize with that name. But we've got a lot of people moving to Northeast Tarrant County. So, in your own words, who is Eason Maykus, and what is Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods?
Sure. Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods was, that's the face. The Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods is the front for a bunch of different aspects of our business. And I like to tell people there's a vertical integration aspect to our business. And Cost Maykus, my dad, was really kind of the pioneer and seeing the growth potential and scale potential. And he was, if he was sitting here, he would probably get goosebumps, or just the biggest compliments you could pay him is he was like kind of like a gambler, not in a stupid way, like a gambler, and leaving his chips on the table in a lot of aspects in business. And he had done that his whole life and had a lot of success with that. And I would also like to say this. I got a Vista print one time, and I knew he would appreciate this. He would never do it for himself, but I kind of at the tail end of his career, I put Cost Maykus and impresario on there.
Oh,
And I had a map on the back side of the card with a bunch of locations of the developments that he had done. So Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods, I would say, really is something that he was the foundation of. My grandpa started building homes and development in Irving, Texas. And then my dad came out here to South Lake and Northeast Tarrant County back in the late 80s. And so obviously the growth of our area has seen huge, it's been huge. So
yeah.
kind of was on the forefront of that back when there was a Dairy Queen out here and Caliche roads and Blacktop roads. And so it's been really neat to see. And he played a big part of that. Now Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods is, we've got Hat Creek Development, which Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods encapsulates that. And that's our development entity. So
Okay.
we do developments for ourselves. So we'll buy a tract of land, identify the potential of that land, the highest and best use for that land. We'll get with a land planner, which is somebody that we consider a friend and somebody that does great work and has had a lot of responsibility for a lot of the growth and planning of this area. And we'll take that, get that land entitled, and then we will build houses on it ourselves or sell to other builders. And
Sure.
and that's the big thing. From the other aspects of our business, there's a group of builders that we have that are in a title company. There are groups of builders, large, small, regional, that buy lots from us, and we partner with to make these successful neighborhoods. And that's what Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods is. A lot of the pieces and parcels of land that are left, a lot of times are families or people that are trying to get rid of their land that maybe decades ago or years ago may have even opposed a development project that we had because they had their parcel and they didn't want to see the growth around it, which is, I think, very natural.
Sure.
That's a natural tendency. And I think the life cycle of the development arm of our business is very long. So it's emotional for the neighbors around it. And when they think that a pasture that was by them or a piece of land by them is going to turn into houses and new families, initially that's a scary concept. I understand that, but our intentions are always right and pure. And it's not always about the bottom dollar. And I think that that has projected itself to where when they decide in their later stages of life, if it's a piece of land that maybe they don't have kids to hand down to, or trying to do estate planning, that we end up having discussions with them, taking on that piece of land and the responsibility that comes with it and being good stewards of that piece of land and creating something really beautiful and the next life cycle for, new families. And the neighborhoods initially are dirt, grass. It's nasty, it's dirty. And then by the time it's done, it's, we've polished this raw piece of dirt into something that we're really proud of. And my dad would say this all the time: there's not any neighborhood that we have done or built houses in, or any project that we're have been a part of, that we drive by years later and say, we're really proud of that. And this isn't just a widget to our family. This isn't just a widget in our business. This is something that probably doesn't make us the best business people in a lot of senses, because there's a lot of emotions in our world too. There's a lot of emotion tied to it, where that's not the case a lot of times. So
there's a lot of interesting things you mentioned there. One, the thing that stands out is just the family business, generational family business, behind Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods. And it's local too. So as you talk about development, I know from my own experiences, and probably for a lot of folks, you casually drive by a plot of land, you start to see maybe a sign go up, coming soon, some streets start appearing, and then, okay, here's going to be the lots, and here's the price point and all that. And so to the casual observer, it looks like, oh, okay, here comes another neighborhood. But as you kind of started to unpack that, there's a lot of careful thought that is going into that. It's more than just developing, it's really growing communities, and establishing new neighborhoods. And I think that there's an immense amount of work that goes into, I know from our own discussions, you've talked a little bit about that, but what does the development side, what does that timeline look like? Because it seems like so much has to go into that before ground even is broken.
There is, and that's the double-edged sword of this area, which now is considered, it's purely infill development, which is very complex. So even 2 decades ago, there's emotions tied to this, and longer ago, there's emotions tied to this. But the timeline that you asked about, Adam, is it's hard to describe that a lot of times, because so much of it is unseen before that land is turned or a piece of equipment shows up on the dirt. So a lot of times what ends up happening in that life cycle of delivering a developed platted lot for somebody to build a house on is negotiations with a landowner, right? Whether they reach out to us, a representative reach out to us, or we identify a tract of land that we really like. Some way, somehow contact is made, and it could just be a friend of a friend. So it could be casually at a kid's baseball game or a kid's event, or mutual friends, and say, hey, we're thinking about selling. So that's kind of the inception of some of this, is just the natural part of it and being involved in the community. So then there is the hard part, which is coming to an agreement of the value of that property, right? Something that's fair for both parties. And then that a lot of times can be a month. That could be 6 months.
Mhm.
That there's no defined timeline there. There's a lot of back and forth there, whether that's a month or 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
And also that's a lot of dependent on the nature of the property, the size, the complexity, the land use is not going back to the highest and best use. What is it currently zoned? What is
Sure.
the future plan that the municipalities laid out that they have planned for that piece? And a lot of times that could be something that was deemed 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 15 years ago that the times have changed, right?
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
things that were retail or commercial, a lot of times with Amazon, obviously our world has drastically changed in
Yeah.
15 years. So cities in their wisdom and citizens in their wisdom have identified, maybe zoning tracts of land or identifying tracts of land as better usage for families rather than commercial and things like that.
Yeah.
Once there's an agreement, a lot of times there is some planning going on parallel with those talks, right? That determines what price could be offered, right? We think we can get this with this piece of land. We think we can do this with it, which establishes a number for us to give to that landowner.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's established, then we embark on the entitlement process, which is working with cities, working with land planners, working with engineers, working with our own staff, developing budgets and pro formas to determine what could be made. Is this even feasible? How close are we cutting it? You're also talking to financial institutions. Hey, if we get this, is this something that's bankable, or is this something that we can get the financing for this?
Yeah.
And then that goes into the next step, which is working with the leadership portions of cities, whether that's planning and zoning, the different commissions and corridor committees, and Spin and Southlake would be here.
Yep.
Planning and zoning is pretty much standard along the lines of all the cities. And then you get into the city councils, and that is also a lot of times a long process because you're working out a lot of kinks. There's a lot of public input and concern that is weighed into the equation, and you try to work those kinks out and try to come to an agreement, which it's impossible to make everybody happy all the time.
Sure.
We sure as heck try. And then by the grace of God, if you get an approval, then the work starts, right? Which would be working with the landowner to finalize the purchase of the property, working with the cities to finalize the plan and to finalize the steps prior to construction. And I know this is a really long answer. I'm not trying to draw it out.
No,
this is kind of generalities, actually. Then there's months and months and months of planning before it's released for commencement of construction. So then you would commence construction on the dirt work. And again, it's dependent on the complexity of the site, access, size, surrounding factors. You would then do the development, which is the dirt work, pouring streets, infrastructure, utilities, wet, dry, all that. And then getting the plat, which is then filing it as something that is legally bankable and sellable to an end user like you, me, our friends, so we could sell a parcel of land and then hopefully build a house for them too, or sell that parcel of land to another builder for them to market and then build for an end user, which would be the homeowner. So that typically the home building process, depending on the complexity, like the house on this screen behind here, that's probably an 11 to 13 month, a 1 year project on average.
Sure.
And so the life cycles of these things, there's a lot of risk involved. There is a lot of love involved in doing it. We wouldn't do it if we didn't love what we do. And a lot of times those life cycles to commence construction on the first house could be 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And then depending on how many lots, I mean, the life cycle of that neighborhood could be a couple of years after the first lot is started to be built on. And then in, 5 years, you've got a completed neighborhood with lots of families. And with Halloween approaching, it's nothing better than people putting up Christmas lights or trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
And that's when it's fun to drive through. The reward is long to see. Obviously, we're a business, so there's financial gain, but truly the reward would be driving through there years later and seeing families or friends that you've built for, or running into them at a restaurant, or running into them at the grocery store, or at little league games, or
Yeah.
cheer practice, or whatever that is. That's very rewarding. And when I got into the business, it felt like everywhere we went, my dad would see somebody he knew, or would talk to somebody he knew. And so back then it'd be like, oh my gosh, we're going to be here for another 30 minutes, whether it was after church or whatever, because we'd run into something. And that's something that's really special. And I remember thinking as I got older and when I was getting out of school that, I like when we run into people now that I'm older. I like that extra time and, eavesdropping on the conversation they're having, and,
Yeah.
hearing about what happened 10, 15 years ago when I wasn't paying attention, of how that gentleman or that family's house got built and my dad had a part in it. And they might tell some dramatic story of, oh, the winter of, 93, and we couldn't get a gas meter set on our brand new house. And we had, you know, movers coming, and it's very hectic, but that's certainly rewarding when those stories come out and that homeowner is so happy and so appreciative of the effort that was put into putting a roof over their head. So
Yeah.
that's just a really awesome feeling.
Man, that's remarkable. Just alone learning about all that goes into the process before a neighborhood is breaks ground and starts growing and being established. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that because this is a family business, you're doing this locally. Like you just said, these are your own neighbors. This isn't development that's happening from an office in another city or another state. Not only is this local, but this is third generation local, and y'all are doing this with your people who are your own neighbors, people who you're going to run into at the schools, at the church, at the stores. I mean, that's remarkable, man.
And not that it would be any other way, but you talk about being held accountable. I mean, that's why you don't want to be worried about going to a restaurant with your family, or worried about going to the grocery store, running into these people. Doing right is something that comes natural with my dad, my grandpa, our family, and obviously preserving that legacy and making them proud. But certainly, um, we can't make everybody happy, but we sure as heck try.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no running from it. We're not developing pastures out in West Texas
Mhm.
from an office and going to look at it, if ever, but, maybe once a year. This is in our backyard. This is something we can't drive to and from the office without being a quarter mile away from a project, or driving by multiple projects on the way there, which is a huge blessing. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
really awesome thing that we're trusted to do that. And, at some point we will run out of land around here. And that's something that's hard for us to explain and for people to wrap their minds around. But something that actually a local mayor said that I think was very wise. It was Mayor Tate, and the community impact, which I like that paper a lot.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, to me, it's that same kind of local feel, right? A lot
Right.
of insight to what's going on locally. And when DFW Airport was announced in the 60s, I mean, that set the stage for what Dallas Fort Worth was going to be.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say that without sounding crass or insensitive to people in our area, but it's not meant to be.
Yeah.
I love looking at stars in the sky and getting out and breathing fresh air on the outskirts of the Metroplex myself. I love that more than anything. But Dallas Fort Worth, the concentric circles around Dallas Fort Worth, our future was solidified back in the 60s when we got an international airport here.
Yeah.
And so, and this should be a positive to people that think, oh my gosh, everything shouldn't be developed.
Mm-hmm.
There's investments by the cities and parks and things like that, but private property rights is a huge thing. And having somebody local that does have a stake in the community, being the steward of that piece of property, is really, really important. And the other thing is, not only do I see the growth as a positive, and when I sit on 114 in an extra 5 minutes of traffic, I might be the only human being in the world that thinks this, but I embrace it, right? One, I know also some like back roads because we live here,
Sure.
so I can avoid it. But sometimes I will get on 114, as crazy as that sounds, and sit in it just to kind of gauge how much worse it was from years prior. But what that tells me is, and this goes back to the conversation, Adam, that you and I had before this, gives me goosebumps. The values of this community, the surrounding communities, it's really interconnected. And people want to move here because of that.
Yeah.
So that traffic I embrace because Dallas-Fort Worth is a place where transplants are moving here because they see the intrinsic value of community. They see the intrinsic value of our values itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's seen. We don't have mountains to look at. We don't have a coastline to look at. There's something intangible here, and we're just a cog of that, providing, hopefully considered beautiful neighborhoods and housing for these transplants that come here, or reloads, fitting the needs from somebody that's lived in a big house in South Lake and wants to still live in the area, but get something newer and more intimate in size, or that young family that may be extending themselves a little bit out of their comfort zone because they see the value of the school systems in the surrounding area, and they want to get their kids involved in those school systems because they've seen the success that we've had. And providing the housing and the neighborhoods and the streets for that is pretty dang special.
Yeah, man. I can hear it in your words as you're talking, Eason. You can hear the care for the community, and it comes out as you talk about how you approach growing a new neighborhood, the planning that goes into it long before there's ever any streets, and even just planning out where the streets are going to go. You can hear the care, and you mentioned the word stewardship. That comes out as I listen to you talk. You can tell that you really, and it sounds like this is something that's been instilled in you from a family value perspective. You really care about the stewardship of what y'all are entrusted to doing, and you care about making sure that it brings value to this wonderful community that we get to call home. So
absolutely,
you're doing fantastic.
I appreciate it. So are you. I mean, you're a family business, and y'all are on a great trajectory. And I'm excited to see what y'all do and how y'all grow too.
Thank you.
Y'all got a lot of good things coming.
Yeah, and to that point, we have had the opportunity to start working with you on the Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods, the homes that y'all are building. And I know my wife, April, who's our principal designer.
Yep.
She has been able to, thank you. She's been able to.
And patient with us.
She's been able to partner with Jan, and I know they have so much fun, figuring out how to bring value to homeowners through the finishes and the selections that are being made. Before we get really into all that, though, let's talk about the value of a Maykus home, because I know that there's things that y'all have done starting generations ago that are distinct, but I'd love to hear you talk about those hallmarks of a Maykus home.
Sure. So when we, whether it's a community that we have developed or not, right? When we go embark on maybe a build job for an individual, or start on a speculative home or a for sale product that doesn't have a family's name behind it yet, that we're designing and building a speculative home or a build job. I think the processes are different, but the care goes into it the same. We really strive, and we have a broad array of product type. So we have a 40-foot wide lot, 35-foot product that's kind of a townhome-esque product that's a little bit closer to more of an urban center in downtown Grapevine, all the way towards a 1 acre lot in the community of Westlake, which is an estate type lot that's very expensive. So we have a broad spectrum of product, but regardless of which product type we are building, or if it's a build job or not, what we're trying to do is create a timeless which comes in with the design with April and my mom, something that's timeless. And we will do trendy if somebody, it is a build job. If somebody wants something,
Yeah.
shoot, it's their house and we're gonna do it for them.
Yeah.
And when it goes out of style, we'll help them put it back into style, right?
Right.
That's what we do. But the the processes that we have at Maykus, we're a small company, we're a family business, but our back room, our office, our staff is a huge factor in that value. A lot of times people will just build anything and everything. And when the market's good, it doesn't really matter how much things cost because somebody's going to be out there and buying it. And frankly, we're not in that time right now. And it's been pretty flush years and business has been good. But even those times we keep the same mentality.
Yeah.
Even when times were really slow during the recession, we were still selling houses, not fast, but slow. And we're trying to create that value. So the value that's created is in the back room. It's in the thought process. It's in the design, from architecture to setting the budgets to trying to hit certain price per square foot to deliver to an end user that they're moving in with equity. And what that does, and that's without sacrificing quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's without sacrificing the safety, the value, the quality of the home. We don't skimp on a lot of things that frankly are covered up with drywall, masonry, brick. The things that are unseen behind the walls is what we take a lot of pride in. My dad was an early adopter 20 plus years ago, fully encapsulating homes. There's still builders that haven't adopted that even to this day. There's certain framing techniques, advanced framing techniques that again are covered up and sometimes we forget to mention. But we build every single house the way we'd build our personal house to house our families, our kids, anything. And we try to create that value and not just make everything an absurdly wow factor, which we can. But what that does is I believe creates a, hopefully a slowly continuous streamline of word of mouth, family, cousins, friends of friends. That's where that value comes into play, doing the right thing. And then they move in. And even though they've created or they've purchased probably the biggest purchase of their whole life, they move in and go, wow, we just got an appraisal to get our permanent loan on this house. And this house appraised for a heck of a lot more than we paid for it. For us, that's not, the attitude for us is not thinking, crud, we left a lot of money on the table. For us, that's an absolute home run.
Yeah.
I love when we get an appraisal for an individual, whether we built the house and they are buying it at a later state of construction, or we build the house for them from foundation all the way to we're in warranty stages. But to me, when that house appraises for more than they paid, that is something that my dad, me, we all think, wow, that's awesome. That is really, really awesome. And that's a huge part of the process that it's really fun to talk about a lot of other things, but having that home appraised for more than they contracted with us, we make a living off building them a quality product. And then they obviously are doing whatever they're doing to pay for that house, which is working their tail off in some form or fashion.
Sure.
And they move into a brand new, nice home that they've worked so hard for. And then they go, wow, not only did we get a nice house that's built to a high standard, we also just moved in here with $50,000 in equity right out of the gate. We didn't have to wait 10 years to create that value.
Right.
And that's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah. That's, and I can hear the passion as you talk about that. I mean, it just comes out. And I think, again, it goes to the core of who you are and who Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods are, because it's something that's really like, it sounds very personal to you, each and every one of these projects. And then to also know, for listeners, you talked about the full encapsulation, the advanced framing techniques. Those are things that, like you said, happen behind the walls. People may not be aware of that, but that is the mark of that quality and I think there's a longevity to that too. And then I gotta imagine that, let's say that's not their forever home, or hey, we're upsizing because our family's growing and we want to go with Maykus again. The resale value has to be there too because of that quality. There's got to be that. I mean, I'd imagine that there's a difference when a Maykus home comes up for sale.
Yes. We've tried to quantify that, and we're going to at some point, but we're all busy, doing the things to day to day do our operations. But yes, we have seen, and I can't prove in this conversation right now, but objectively, when our homes resell in a Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods community, that value is shown at the value that they sell the house for. The price per square foot is carried forward, and that value is seen on the upside of when they sell it. And we see that time and time again. Nowadays, we live in an amazing time where you can lay in bed and look at the interior of every home for sale. Through
Yeah.
Zillow, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And that's another cool thing. A lot of times when you see a home and it says Maykus Homes, or back in the day, we Maykus Custom Homes. We rebranded recently to Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods. But that Maykus Custom Homes, built by Cost Maykus, or built by Maykus Custom Homes, or built by Maykus Homes. That's something that, that feeds our ego a little bit. That feels really good.
Yeah.
And we're proud of that.
Yeah.
Because we are small, and it's cool to get a shout out like that and see that home closed and funded for more than the average price on that street.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing. And a lot of the trades and craftsmen and vendors that we use, it's a hard thing to say no to a lot of folks, whether they're a framer, a supplier, or something like that. But we are loyal to a fault to a lot of our guys, and we've made changes and switches over the years. Actually, especially during the recession, there was tears shed and hard conversations, which thank God I didn't know enough then, and a lot of it was done by my dad. And there's conversations that have to happen like that along the way because you're trying to improve your business.
Sure.
But a lot of the craftsmen and trades people that pick up checks, or we pay them now through, online.
Yeah.
But the day of them coming in and picking up a check, which we still have guys that still do that. Some of those guys have been working with our family for as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
So I've known them, or known of them, or seen them, or remember them when I was a young boy, right?
Yeah.
And not being cheesy, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And now those businesses are changing hands generationally. So I think the value aspect, and there's hard things about our business, of course, but also getting to work with 200 plus craftsmen on a house and kind of orchestrating that is really cool. And on a day like, I can't remember the last time, but it's really nice on a Friday afternoon if you run into somebody, or you get up early in the morning and you don't have a meeting, drinking a cup of coffee and go and run into those guys on the job and have like a quick session of talking shop with them or whatever. Yeah. That's a pretty cool thing too. We're really lucky to do what we do.
Yeah. And the fact that you've got skilled craftsmen, tradesmen that have been with the family this whole time, they know your value system. They probably share the same values. That's where I would imagine that loyalty comes from. So all of that goes into the quality of a Maykus home, because it's not just, a bunch of concrete and sticks and bricks and stone. It's a lot of personal attention to detail and care, because these are local businesses, local tradesmen, craftsmen who are coming in and bringing value to ultimately an amazing home for a family.
Absolutely. I mean, even designers and neighbor interiors. I mean, y'all play a huge role. So when I say craftsmen, tradesmen, vendors, and things like that, it's not always somebody hammering a nail on a board. It's the expertise of our guys. It's the expertise of, you know, our architects, designers, engineers. It's a whole set of people working together. And what we are doing is managing what we think are the best of the best to put a roof over somebody's head. It's not always about price. It's not always about the cheapest bid. It's not. There are commodities and there are things to play that game of, you know, getting the best value for our client. But when it comes to qualitative stuff, it's not always about that. It's about who we know is going to do right by the construction of the house, and do right by our client, do right by us. And ultimately you get something like the screen behind us, you know, a house, you know, whether it's custom, you know, hyper luxury, full on custom, semi-custom, something that we have value engineered, and we're offering at $630,000 a mile from downtown Grapevine. That home is built with almost all the same trades, crafts, experts as that $4 million house in Westlake. We just value engineered it to get it down. It's not unsafe. It's not unfit or anything. It's actually built structurally the exact same way. The aesthetics on the inside are different. And we may use some economies of scale by ordering in bulk, but 95% of the folks that work on that house are the same people that work on a home like on the screen behind you.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think also because you talk about all the experts in their craft who are involved in a project, you have the generational experience as a family business of knowing how to manage these projects. This isn't just something that's, you know, you're new to. Like, I would imagine, and you don't have to go into any specifics, but there's a lot of processes that y'all have developed to be in business as long as you have, and be doing it locally, and be bringing the type of quality that you're talking about is behind the walls of these homes.
Yeah. The intangible part of learning the business, you know, started as a boy. Like my dad taking me to, you know, pitching lessons or hitting lessons or whatever, and him being on the phone constantly, even after hours, you know, lining things up, or the way he spoke to people, the respect he showed, the care he gave, the time he would give people. That was a huge part. And, you know, that's carried forward. And I know that sounds silly, but I feel like you get a lot of good service by the way you treat people. You kind of get what you give, you know, and that it's hard to explain to a client. I wouldn't have these conversations with a client, but those are the things that that to me, I know we're giving them the best product. That to me is hard to put a price on. And I don't expect anybody to choose us over that because I can't explain that. But I think if they were to see our product or neighborhood and take a chance, we're going to deliver them something special. So anyways, I don't know if I answered the question. But...
No, but I mean, anyone listening, I think can hear that attentiveness that you have. It is very personal, and because of our opportunity to support y'all from a design perspective, I've been able to see, and I know April has too, to be able to see firsthand that attention to each and every client and every project. And I mean, it comes out even as you talk about it. So for anyone who is listening and is considering, like, I think the way you talk, I think communicates very well what Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods is about. And I think that you show and demonstrate through not just your words, but the things that y'all are doing, that you take being a steward very seriously, And at the same time, you find reward in being able to drive by that neighborhood
Yep.
and see those kids trick-or-treating, see the lights on the house, see a neighborhood that is essentially thriving, and there's a lot of families, a lot of memories that are going to happen in those homes and in those neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for taking a part of it. I
Yeah.
mean, y'all are a huge part of it. I mean, that's y'all are a representative of us for sure, and vice versa. We're a representative of y'all. So, um, yeah, that's an important thing.
Yeah. And I know April and Jan, like I know just from April talking about the design element, because that is a part of it. I know how much fun she has through that part. I think it's also fun for clients too, when they get to talk about the things that are in front of the walls, and making those selections. But I know that one of the things that's important is that, if it's build to suit and there's things that are trendy, obviously
Sure.
it's there for the client, and I know we work to make sure that happens. But also on, maybe a for sale home, a lot of thought goes into, I know with Jan and April, the design elements and what those hard finishes should be, what's the best value there, helping educate the client on, this material versus that, and then making sure that it's not just something that's good to look at now, that it has that timeless element that 30 years from now, you're going to get that same emotion walking into that kitchen and seeing that island with that type of stone and that backsplash, those light fixtures, all of those things that are like, hey, this is where we've had family dinners for the last 30 years. And this home was special because of that.
Right. It's, the design aspect is always, I feel, a hard job for y'all, my mom, because there's a lot of things that we want to do. I feel like it would be similar to somebody in the fashion industry or something,
Sure.
to where the people that are on the runways, in our area in Texas, I don't see anybody wearing those clothes, but if they do, maybe it's a decade ahead, right?
Sure.
So the homes and the things that we see, we would like to do, that it wouldn't be popular for a few years out.
Right.
So there's a balance of, we want to provide what the market is buying. And so we almost have to govern ourselves from what we want to build or provide, because the general public is seeing what they see on social media, or Pinterest or Houzz or Instagram, right? And, those algorithms are going to show, I'm not going to name out any particular trendy thing right now because we're probably doing a lot of it. But there was a very popular brick choice back in the day, and it's funny if everything comes full circle, but for instance, Chicago antique, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a brick choice that every home was built with. And everybody had a Chicago antique brick house, and it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. So yeah, y'all have a tough job, and I'm glad I don't have to play a part in that.
Well, I know, I thankfully, me personally, I don't have to do that because April's our principal. But I know that with her working with your mom and the amount of time I know that they put into making sure that those selections are going to be something that has that wow factor, but also has that longevity from a material and maintenance perspective, but also stylistically that, 10 years down the road, you don't want to rip it out because it's no longer in style and it's everywhere.
Right.
And I know that that's something that, as we got to start working with your mom, April and Jan, I know that is a core value in their approach to those selections, making sure that when it comes to those finishes on a Maykus home, that it's value added, and a lot of thought goes into that, not just, hey, this looks good right now, but also like long term, what is this? How's this going to wear and tear, and how is this going to look?
Yeah, and what you're saying right there, Adam, I think is kind of going back to what I said, because building a house is a task, and it's actually a lot less cumbersome of a task, I believe, nowadays than it used to be. There's management software, there's professionals that if you decided to build a house, if, let's say somebody came and said, hey, that the photo of the house behind us, this is the style I like, tell me when it's done. That never happens,
Sure.
but we could do that. And I actually feel like it would be great. But and that's on the build to suit side, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun process to be involved in. And I think people choose to build a custom house
Right.
because they want to pick their fit and finishes. And I think that's a great thing. The speculative build, the for sale job, and this is one of those things that's hard to quantify, but a lot of times being early in a community, let's say, is a positive. Those are the people that get rewarded. A lot of times the pioneers in the community where, you would think, oh, the pioneer is the one that gets shot in the back with the arrow, where it's not the case. The pioneer is the one that is now committing to live in a new community, take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see it as a risk, but people that don't know us and know what we're doing, that would be a huge risk. Hey, we're about to buy the most expensive asset that we've ever built or bought, and it's going to be somewhere that's an unproven area, which I do believe our area is proven up. And
Sure.
even if it's a neighborhood that, God forbid, was to fall out, I think ultimately it would shake out to be okay. But the homes that April and Neighbor and my mom choose the finishes for, that we're marketing for, I also think there's a huge upside for somebody coming in and buying a house that has had the selections made, because we are trying to give that house a boost, something that's a little bit maybe out of the box sometimes. And maybe it's not recognized as something that's going to be timeless right out of the gate, but I think it will wear and age very timelessly, as you said. And so there's a huge upside depending on which process that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just saying this. There's a huge upside to building a house under construction or almost complete. There's a huge upside to building a custom house. There's no right or wrong. I think it depends on the client's needs, what their timelines are, what their budgets are, what their careers are, what their family dynamic is, how many kids they have, how much time do they have.
Yeah.
There's so many factors, and but we can cater to any and all of that, all the way to, oh, you need a rent house? We can put you in a rent house and work out a living situation if need be while we build you a house, or while we finish a house that was already under construction that we purchased. So all the way from getting the financing to the closing to reselling a house that they maybe currently live in or whatever, we are, we're able to, we're not a aircraft carrier, we're a battleship. We can pivot, move, and adjust with the client's needs, which is also a good thing about being small. That comes with some challenges, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, it comes with a lot of positives. And that's something, going back to the value side, and this is the last thing I'll say on that, because I think I've beaten a dead horse, but with those technologies and with our staff, even though we have a staff of 10 to 12 folks, we achieve an economies of scale with our back room, our buying groups. It's not just like, oh, that salesman's been my friend for 10 years. We're going to use them because they've been our friend. No, we take it very seriously to achieve the savings and value, to put that value or money back into our clients' pockets, right? That is something we take very seriously, because I wouldn't say anybody can build a house, but my friend can do this or my friend can do that. We get that a lot. And I need to create something to show the investment that we have in our staff and our processes that allows a buyer to see.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And I don't want it to ever come across as an arrogant thing, but we have put a lot of time and effort and money into the processes to provide a sense of peace, I guess you would say, to a client, from a financial savings side all the way to the processes side, to where building a house should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you demonstrate that just today. You demonstrated that through how you talk and what you talk about. I think it comes off, and I think I would encourage anyone who wants to get to be involved in this process. Like, you can hear right now, like that level of care for the process and even your own team, your staff. I think it comes out in the way that you talk, and then it shows, like, in the photos that we see of the quality of the product. For folks who are interested in learning more about Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods, exploring their options for their families with y'all, what's the best way for them to get in touch, or where should they start that process?
Sure. I know we live in a day and age of picking up the phone and calling is, I don't want to do that. Number one, if you ever do want to do that, feel free. Our sales line is going to be answered 95% of the time, if not an immediate call back. But www.maykus.com, Maykus.com. And again, we manage our website in-house. So that's a good source of information, but a lot of times it may not be perfectly up to date, or there could be some information missing, even though we put a big effort into that. So Maykus.com. Also, our social media. So Maykus Homes and Neighborhoods, or Maykus Homes on Facebook, and then Maykus Homes on Instagram are good sources. Our Facebook is kind of a day-to-day, it kind of shows our day-to-day processes. It, like, internal. A lot of our staff are on there. A lot of our current projects are on there. A lot of our current neighborhoods are on there. Instagram is a little bit more of the pretties. Our Maykus Homes Instagram is a little bit more of the finished product.
Sure.
And some of those products are, not dated, but like the house that's behind us, for instance, that home was completed 1.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times the photos of that finished product are delayed because, you got to get it shot and edited and sent. Not that there's a lot of editing there outside of, maybe making shadows disappear or something.
Right.
I'm not an editor. I don't know. But website number one, and always, 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 if there's any questions or something looks off or I can't get it to load on my cell phone, sales line, or when you get home, use it, Maykus.com from a desktop or laptop or whatever, or tablet. And then our social media is positive too. And our office is in Grapevine, Texas, right off Northwest Highway. We're also about a half a mile from Main Street in Grapevine off Northwest Highway in Maine, right by the Shipley Donuts, 604 East Northwest Highway, Suite 102. So we are local and we're there. We've actually sold 2 homes from walk-ins, believe it or not, which is something
That's awesome.
Yeah, because we're not a retail. This is our office, and you'll really get to see the dynamic.
Yeah,
you'll get to see the mess and the pictures of the kids, and but I am proud of our office though. So anybody's welcome there anytime, and pretty much from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. somebody will be there.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put all of that information in the show notes so folks can quickly jump out to y'all's socials, y'all's website and everything. I got to say, man, I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation coming into it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed learning more about what goes into everything that y'all do. And I think it shows not just in the beautiful pictures, but also in what you talk about, what your value system is. Y'all are doing an awesome job, Eason.
Adam, thank you for being a part of it. Thanks for having me. I know, and you already are. Y'all are demonstrating what an asset and a value you are to us and your family. And I do nothing but root for Neighbor Interiors as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.